and thank you for joining us. My name is Lawrence Lang, and today I've travelled to Halifax to spend some time with Shelagh Fawcett. It's always a delight to speak to members of the D'Oyly Carte who are not on stage, the forgotten heroes as it were. Shelagh was wardrobe mistress with the carte from 1976 until just before the company closed in 1982. What led you to join the company? Did you have a formal training in fashion or dressmaking?
I didn't, no. I wanted to be a stage manager.
All right.
So I went off to drama school, Guildford School of Acting, and did a course in stage management.
Right.
And then when the course was coming to an end, I was casting around for a job. And at that time, there wasn't many jobs available. You know, you get the stage and you open up and you see the situation's vacant. And I saw the advert for D'Oyly Carte. They wanted a wardrobe assistant.
All right.
And I think they were just about coming back off tour from America in 76.
Right.
And I thought, well, there's nothing much happening, so I might as well apply for this. So I went up to Savoy Hill to the offices, was interviewed by Albert Truelove.
Oh, good old Albert, yes.
And it was that really hot summer of 76.
Oh, yes.
You know, so
yes.
it was quite an unpleasant journey coming backwards and forwards because it was so hot. But it was great because I think I actually got the job there and then, from what I can remember. And he then said, right, well, your course is coming to an end at college. How about you work in the London wardrobe for a month? So the month of August, when everyone was resting, I was actually in the London wardrobe with all the girls there, Ruby Buckingham and, you know, all the lovely ladies. And I was just learning really about all the costumes and doing bits of repairs, lots of washing, I seem to remember.
Yes, I'll be asking you about that in a moment.
And then seeing all the new choristers coming in for their costume fittings,
yes,
which was rather good. So I spent a good month there working before I actually went on tour, starting off in Brighton.
So very much learning on the job.
Very much so, yeah.
All right. Did you have any exposure to Gilbert and Sullivan before you joined the company, or did this topsy-turvy world come fresh to you?
No, I knew a little bit. Going back to school, my English teacher was an Amdram. He belonged to the Halifax Amateur Operatic Society. And as kids, he just got us to go and see the productions. It was really good. So I've always had an interest in musical theatre.
Right. And
I think they did a couple of GNS at that point. I think I saw Mikado.
Right.
And I did see Pirates of Penzance as well, because he played the Sergeant of Police in Pirates of Penzance. So I'd had a little bit of exposure. And then when I started working, I went into office work. I was an office junior. And one of the ladies in the office was a keen Savoyard, and she belonged to the Halifax Savoyards. And she said, do you want to come and see a production? And I did. I went and saw something there. I think I saw the Mikado again. But then Donald Adams and Tom Round came to the theatre in Halifax doing one of their
the Gilbert
concerts.
Sullivan for All.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she said, how do you fancy coming along and seeing that? And I was absolutely bowled away by that, because they were telling anecdotal stories of life with the cart and all of that kind of thing. So I'd had that kind of exposure before I went to drama school, but never thought anything about joining the company or anything like that. No. Yeah.
To give an idea of scale, how many costumes were you responsible for?
Out on tour, I was looking after the ladies' chorus, so we'd have 15 to 16 women in the chorus, and so you've got how many shows? It would probably be round about the 400 mark.
Wow. Yes.
And all the accessories as well. So you've got the costumes and then the shoes and the stockings and occasionally the underwear and that kind of thing. So quite a lot, really.
Did you have any responsibility for the sort of hand props, or was it just purely the costumes? Just
purely the costumes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how many in the wardrobe team?
Well, when I joined, there was Vera, who was the wardrobe mistress, and John, her husband, Vera Carnegie and John Carnegie, and then myself. Occasionally we had a fourth person, but not very often. So just the three of us really that were touring around, and Vera looked after the principal costumes.
Right.
John did some of the principal men's costumes, but he also did the chorus as well when we went. There were just three of us. Yeah.
Right. There must have been a meticulous process in place to ensure that all the costumes were returned to the correct storage place, so that you always knew where everything was.
Yeah, we toured with these massive wicker skips, absolutely huge skips, and each show had a different coloured band around the skip. So, if I can remember correctly, I think Mikado had a black and red band going round, just painted around, and then there was yellow, and I think Patience was green, and so you knew what show you were doing because there was this colour coding on the skips. But yes, everything had to be packed, and one of the things that I actually sort of found was that the neater you packed the costumes, the less creased they were when they came out at the next venue.
Yes.
So, it wasn't a case of just throwing things into skips and hoping for the best. You learnt how to pack things properly so that when they did come out, there was less ironing to do, because the job was ironing.
Yes.
It was just a lot of ironing, which incidentally was when I first joined in Brighton. I was just about 21, I think, something like that. So, very fit, reasonably fit. I'd, been working, doing stage management and working at the theatre in Guildford as well, even Arno Theatre in Guildford. So doing quite a lot of manual work. But I wasn't prepared for the actual... It was very tiring. It was... It actually required quite a lot of energy and reserves to actually do it, because you're not just taking costumes out of skips, you're then carrying costumes to the dressing rooms or to the wardrobe. Yes. And sometimes, the skips would be down on the ground floor, because there's, depending on what theatre, there's very little storage space. So you're emptying skips and carrying them out up to the wardrobe. You're ironing them, and then you're carrying them to the dressing room, which could be miles away from the wardrobe as well. So it actually was sort of physically demanding. It was very demanding.
And the costumes were very heavy, weren't they?
Patience and Mikado in particular were really heavy. And when you've got operas with two lots of costumes, because you've got changes. So Patience, when you've got those really heavy green cloaks and dresses in the first act, and then you've got those really cream and red costumes in the second act, were quite heavy, and the Mikado costumes were very heavy as well. I mean, really lovely thick costumes, but very heavy. And you're carrying sort of 3 or 4 in both hands, and I think remembering that the costumes were long, you were carrying them with your hands high, sort of hands above your shoulders to actually sort of stop them from trailing on the floor. So it was it was physically demanding, and I was going home because we'd work in the morning. We'd get to the theatre about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and then you'd work until 1 o'clock, have the afternoon back, and then come back for the half at 7. And I was going back to my digs for the first month and just going to sleep. But then you build up this reserve. Then you actually sort of build up an immunity to it. But yeah, I was surprised at how tired I was in the afternoons.
And I expect this skill of packing has stayed with you through life, has it?
If
you go on holiday,
if I go on holiday,
everything is immaculate when you take it out again.
Yeah.
You mentioned about the amount of storage space in theatres, and that Brighton was one of your first theatres, and the Theatre Royal in Brighton is my sort of home theatre, and I know that the space there is very limited. Yeah. I remember seeing in outside the stage door there was always large removal vans. Is that where all the wicker baskets were kept? So you had a different lorry turn up every day?
They used to, depending on the size and the space of backstage in the theatre, they'd probably get a lot of the skips out, but they'd be piled high, and what would happen was you'd actually be relying on stagehands and the property master, baggage master John Sammett, to actually get the skips down for you so that you could empty them. But part of the problem was in theatres like Brighton, which are small, you couldn't, if you were doing repeat performances, say we did Mikado quite a lot, so we might do 2 matinee days of Mikado because it was popular, but one, it would be Wednesday and Saturday. But in a lot of theatres, you couldn't keep those costumes out after the Wednesday performance. You'd have to pack them away again on the Thursday morning,
Right.
and then get them out again on the Saturday,
yes.
because the next skips you need the next show, so the next lot of skips had to come down and be unloaded, because they were piled high, sort of 2-3 skips high backstage sometimes.
Yes.
So it was quite a problem really, because you just were continually packing and unpacking. And if you were there for 2 weeks, you'd be doing this several times, if there was no room.
And the dead weight of those baskets must have been enormous.
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
really heavy.
Yes.
Yeah, very, very heavy. So it was actually a problem, because once the costumes were out, they were very, very rarely that you could actually, maybe in Sadler's Wells, you could actually sort of keep some of them out. But more often than not, when you were in smaller provincial theatres, you had to pack everything away again.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, the dreaded question, did anything ever go missing, and how did you cope?
No, I can never remember anything going missing.
Right.
No.
So the process of putting things back in the right place obviously worked.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I hunted around makeup places, where people actually left their things. And sometimes you'd be scratching your head thinking, well, where are these stockings, or something like that, and having to.
Yes, I suppose you would rely also on the discipline of the individual performers to make sure that they complied with the rules.
Not taking them home inadvertently, or something like that. Yeah.
So, were there any disastrous wardrobe malfunctions that you can share with us?
How long have you got?
I think that side tells it all, doesn't it?
There was one nice one with Sadler's Wells, and it was when I was actually wardrobe mistress, so it's going on towards the end of my time with Carte, and we were doing Roddy-Gore.
It's my favourite.
Yeah, it's my favourite too. And Ken Sanford came, he said, I split my trousers. The zip had gone on his trousers. But the thing was that I think he'd been doing that rather energetic dance with Meston Reid,
yes. You understand.
You understand, yeah. And he'd come off, and literally there was no time. I couldn't fix the zip in the time, because he had to go back on stage for the finale, So I'm literally sewing him into these trousers. I'm thinking, gosh, I hope don't sew him to it. And then literally at the end of Act 1 had to cut him out of them again, which was something. But he took it in his stride. He was very calm about it.
Or at least he has a costume change at the end of
exactly,
that one,
yeah.
Yes.
But the big one, I suppose, and again it was at the Sadler's Wells, it's when we did the new production of Ireland.
All right.
And we were changing, the costumes. So it was a Bruno Santini design. And the women's chorus were in these black and silver costumes, which were horrendous because they were made of this very, very flimsy netting. So the least thing, that if you had to just walk by something which had just one, little bit of unevenness on it, it would click. The costumes would actually attach themselves to this thing, and then holes would appear. So you were forever sewing up holes in the costumes. Which was an absolute nightmare, and it was every performance. It was awful, but the big thing was the shoes. The new shoes were made of this silver and black brocade, very, very, very fine shoes. But the brocade started to wear off on the shoes, just leaving a very sort of dull, surface. What we're going to do, we can't actually repair these shoes. You can't actually sew shoes. So we thought, right, once the brocade comes off completely, we're going to have to spray them. So we got some silver and black spray paint and a D'Oyly, and just sort of sprayed them. This caused another problem then, because the soles came away from the uppers. So we thought, okay, get the green shoes out, get the old green shoes out from the previous performances. So got these green shoes out, and we had to do the same thing again, just sort of spray the green shoes, black and silver through the doilies. Now these shoes were leather, and obviously they'd lasted an awful long time. They were absolutely incredibly well made. But the only thing was, once they got damp, they stretched. So the girls were going on stage and, kicking and doing their dances and things, and these shoes were flying off and became very loose. So we then had to sew elastic over the tops of the shoes to keep the shoes on. So yeah, it was not one of the best times, I think.
I was with Patricia Ann Bennett yesterday, and she did mention that she did do a kick and lost a shoe and was sort of hunting round. Yes. Do you think that it's a case sometimes with some of these costume designers that they don't actually realise the rigours of that the costumes have to go through on stage?
So, yeah.
That it's all very well to have something that looks nice, but it's got to last.
It's got to last, and I think on tour as well, that is a huge problem because sort of there's an awful lot of wear and tear, and I was just dreading going out on tour with it. The other thing was that these skirts would attach anything to themselves, and the girls would be walking out with bras dangling down the backs of them or something.
Yes.
And you had to use I remember sort of checking at one point, saying I think it was Suzanne O'Keeffe had got this bra dangling down the back.
Yes.
You can't go into it. And then there was one occasion, I think it was a dress rehearsal, and there was Pat Leonard, who was playing the Fairy Queen, came on in the second act, and she came on by the sentry box. And her cloak got caught on the sentry box because these costumes attach themselves to anything. And of course, I think her cue was "oh shame" as she came on the stage, which it became something else as she couldn't pass the sentry box.
I was talking to Alistair Donkin recently, and we discussed the cleaning regime for costumes. I should imagine that it could get a bit unpleasant being with some of these costumes, especially if the weather was getting hotter.
I do remember that it wasn't very pleasant ironing costumes either, because once you've been out on the road quite a bit, the heat, but there was the problem of touring, because in those days very, very few theatres had washing machines. In fact, I can only remember, I think it was Norwich that had washing machines,
right.
And then it belonged to the residential theatre company down there, so you're sort of saying, can we use the washing machines? But the other problem was, because you were packing shows away again, you couldn't leave anything out, so you couldn't actually wash them.
Leave them damp, and I would imagine the drying time for the yeoman costumes or the peers' costumes.
Well, you wouldn't wash anything like that because they'd all have to be dry cleaned.
Yes.
So you're talking about shirts and socks, and then pirates, where you've got the crinolines and the petticoats and the bloomers, those kind of things. So they were actually going on wearing socks that they were actually, that they'd worn for performance after performance after performance. And the problem is, you couldn't actually keep them out, because if you were packing up again, where would you put them?
Yes.
And the chances of them getting lost if you did was a problem. I do remember that we're forever going to Boots's Chemist to buy this cleaning fluid that they sold in bottles. Don't know whether they do anymore, but it's a kind of dry cleaning fluid,
right,
that you could actually rub around collars and things to sort of try and get makeup off on collars and cuffs and things like that. And I do remember that I think in some of the costumes there were pads sewn into the armpits so that you could at least remove the pads and wash the pads,
right,
and put them back. But in terms of cleaning costumes, unless there was some catastrophe where somebody spilled coffee or tea down them or something, the costumes weren't cleaned for the whole of the tours.
Right.
It was just when they got back to the London wardrobe that actually happened.
Potentially unpleasant.
I mean, I think once we did get to London and Sadler's Wells, we did actually hunt out laundrettes where you could actually do a wash. And occasionally, if we went to Manchester, we'd have a longer stay in Manchester.
Yes.
You could probably do the same thing there. But there was this thing with a kind of custom and practice that, well, we've always done it this way, so that's the way it is. Whereas I think, we could have done things a little bit differently and been a little bit more hygienic. I think. Yeah. But custom and practice dictates sometimes,
doesn't it? Just, and I suppose you sort of mentioned the London seasons. You would be doing probably 3 days on the trot of each show, so it would give you time to take the yeoman costumes out of the sequence, because you might not be performing that for a week and a half or something. So that you could get those down to Johnson's to do the dry cleaning. Other dry cleaning companies are available.
That happened very rarely. It was just the shirts and the socks and bits of underwear. But
Yes. Keep the windows open. If an understudy went on, did they have their own principal costume, or did they have to rely on the main principal's costume and get fitted into it?
No, they had their own costumes.
All right.
Yeah. Yes, so they were there and ready. Probably a lot more creased than the other costumes would be. But yeah.
Yeah, if you didn't have to iron those in advance, you wouldn't have done, would you?
Exactly.
You were with the company when they visited Windsor to give the Queen a performance of HMS Pinafore. People have spoken about the removal of certain items, so we won't go into that now. But did you have a spare set of costumes that you took with you, or did you have to bundle everything up from Brighton and take it up there on the day?
No, everything was bundled up and taken on the day.
Right.
And it's quite funny, really. I remember it because we had to go dressed up even when we were sort of doing our ironing, because normally you go into the theatre and you'd be sort of dressed quite
jeans
casually, jeans and t-shirt,
yes.
Because you're doing sort of that kind of job. But I remember sort of having to sort of have rather a smart dress on and going, and then having a change of clothes because you had to then go into evening wear for the meal, even though we were going to be nowhere near the royal family or anything, because we were in a separate room. We were in evening wear, so obviously we had a change of clothes as well. But just I remember getting there and being shown by this I don't know what you call him, a footman or something. He was in a red tail coat. Right. Showed us where we'd be working, and I remember that at the tea breaks they come with these great big silver trays and proper china cups and saucers and teapots and whatever, which was interesting. And then if you needed to go visit the loo, you'd have to say, "Excuse me, but I want to go to the loo." And this man would appear
back at school, wasn't it?
And this man would appear and take you to where the the loos were. But I remember going down into the bowels of the earth of the castle, and I think it's where a lot of the servants had their recreation areas. And there was a subsidised bar down there, I seem to remember, which I think I had a drink, and seeing the workings of the castle from down under, which was sort of pretty dingy, really, but it seemed to function very well.
Right. So you didn't get to meet any of the royal family? No.
Yeah, just bundled off into this sort of dining area where we had
your lemon posset.
Oh my God, a lemon posset,
which Paul Seeley seemed to enjoy talking about.
Was the rallying cry of John Ellison for
yes.
quite a while. Yeah. You knew he was in the theatre because you hear lemon posset being bellowed.
company toured for 48 weeks a year. You must have some amazing stories relating to life on the road.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I loved it. I mean, it was a lovely way to spend your life, really. I think when you're younger, I mean, it must be difficult for older people, that once you get past a certain age, I think it must be pretty intolerable. But at the age of 21, it was great fun. And I just remember the Scottish tour was absolutely brilliant.
Right.
I love that we started off in Newcastle and then went over to Glasgow and then up to Inverness, I think was the sequence, then across to Aberdeen and then down to Edinburgh. But I just remember, that had some fantastic digs up there as well. I mean, in Glasgow, I was staying with Heather Perkins, a wig mistress, and we picked this letter out from the handouts that you get at the company manager's door backstage, and he was an airline pilot. Called him Monroe, I can't remember his first name, but he was off flying jets and he just left us his flat. Oh, which was absolutely amazing. And we said one day that we'd like to go out and sort of do the Trossachs and things. And he made us this fabulous picnic before he left to go wherever he was going. I think he was going to the Far East. And we had this fabulous picnic that he'd left, and he'd just packed it all up for us in this hamper, which was lovely. It was great. And then from there, going up to Inverness, I just remember driving up there, and it was absolutely fantastic scenery, because I'd never been to Scotland before. No. And again, I was sharing with Heather, we were sharing digs in Inverness, and we just jumped our bags, and she said, come on, let's go. And we jumped into her car, and we just drove around the whole of Loch Ness before it got dark, which was absolutely lovely, because we got to the middle of the loch, and you could see the mist actually sort of rolling in from both ends, and it was very creepy, very eerie, but absolutely lovely. And then from Inverness, we just did the Black Isle and went to Ullapool and Oban and places like that, which was absolutely fabulous. So I saw an awful lot of Scotland. I think we did Glencoe as well, which was great. And then coming down into Aberdeen is where we did the Royal Command performance for the Queen Mother. Oh, right, yes. Which was the new Ireland. So, yes, that was good. And I remember, yes, I quite liked Aberdeen as well. And then coming down into Edinburgh, which I didn't like very much. But by that time it was getting quite cold because winter was coming on. Right. And I just seem to remember that the rain was horizontal a lot of the time. A bit like it has been here. Exactly, yeah. So if people do hear strange noises in the background, it is absolutely blowing a gale here. No, it's not very good today. So yes, Edinburgh, I never particularly liked as a city. I think I preferred Glasgow. Right. I must tell you, just that's twigged off another thing about Glasgow. And I can't remember whether it was a Saturday matinee or a Wednesday matinee, but we were doing Mikado. And the theatre in Glasgow was really nice, and they had this lovely kind of cafe area. And, during the show, if you've got nothing much on, and you can hear it over the tannoy anyway, you could just go and have a cup of coffee and relax. And I remember that during the matinee, the fire alarm kept going off. Oh. And every time it went off, this fire engine appeared on the street, and you got firemen running into the theatre. And of course, the performance had to be stopped, but it was just a false alarm. And I think it happened 3 or 4 times. I mean, I think that the show went on and on and on. That time it was quite funny, because I was sitting there in this cafe, and it was overlooking the streets, and you could see every time that the fire engine drew up, and all these firemen got out and ran into the theatre. And then 5 minutes later came out and drove away again. Sort of quite Gilbertian in itself. Yeah, exactly, yeah. It was quite funny. But yes, Edinburgh, the digs we had in Edinburgh weren't particularly brilliant. We had a couple of rooms in a pub not far from the theatre. I mean, the ideal thing is you get good digs quite near the theatre, which obviously didn't always work out. But we'd got this pub, but there was a disco practically every night. It was annoying. So in the end, we just sort of gave up, and I actually sort of moved out and stayed with the family, military family, near the castle, which was lovely, for the final week, which was really, really nice. And then from Edinburgh, I think we went down to Blackpool, and that was in the beginning of end of November, beginning of December. So that was quite chilly once we got to Blackpool. I think it snowed. I remember it snowing. So yeah, touring was quite nice. So I always remember this. Paul Seeley used to travel a lot with me because he didn't drive. And obviously we'd travel around a lot on a Sunday, get one place to the other. But I always remember going up from Sadler's Wells for Christmas, and Paul lived in Bradford and I lived in Halifax. So I was taking him home for Christmas, and I think it was actually sort of late on Christmas Eve, and it was snowing like anything going up the motorway. And then we got into Bradford and was coming down Horton Road, which is quite a steep road into the centre of Bradford, and there was... snowplows hadn't been out or anything, and I just remember my car just losing control of my car, and I just closed my eyes in the end and just steered into the curb, and I literally just stopped inches away from a parked car by just turning the wheels into the curb. So that wasn't particularly pleasant. So I think you were at the mercy of the elements of the the weather as well sometimes. And motorway driving is not particularly pleasant once it's heavy rain and snow and things.
Yes.
Yeah. But in the summertime it was lovely.
But talking about touring, during the time that you were with the company, they toured America, but I understand that you weren't allowed to join them on that trip. That must have been quite a disappointment.
Yeah, it was actually. I think there was a couple of reasons. A, that the expense of taking the whole of everybody going, but also American equity, because I think for every person, there was these deals going over that. For every person you sent over, there had to be somebody employed there. So you'd have had 6 people in the wardrobe, and you only needed 3, kind of thing. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't go. And the first time when they went over, when did they go over? I can't remember. Was it 78? I think when they went to America again, they went in 76, so it must have been 78, wasn't it?
Well, they
was
did
it 79?
78, 79, I think, was Australia and New Zealand.
Right. I can't remember what it was. Everything blurs.
Well,
I can't remember.
A senior moment.
But yes, it was one of those things, I suppose. But I just, hunkered down and waited for them to come back. And I think I did another stint in the London wardrobe for a month, when they did get back, and just working to get the costumes ready again for the tour. Yeah.
I think they only took a limited number of operas with them, so I suppose it gave you an opportunity to do running repairs on the bits and pieces that were left.
So
change the sweaty arm pads around.
Exactly. So it didn't seem too long, I don't think. No. Had a nice break.
Yes. Okay, so one of the aspects of touring is the theatrical landladies, and you've certainly touched on it. But I'm sure that there must be some more stories tucked away in your brain that you can share with us.
Yes, I mean, you get a mixture of good and bad places. Some of the good ones have been absolutely brilliant. I remember Brighton. After the first time I went to Brighton, I then the system was that the company would actually write into local newspapers, and then you'd get these letters back from people offering places to stay, and if you wanted the full choice of digs, you made sure that you were the first in the queue outside the company manager's office on the day that they were going to.
Peter Riley has spoken about the scramble for letters.
Yes. And I always remember being a new person in the company and having no digs to go back to, because I think once you were established, you kept your digs as far as you could, and woe-betide anybody who nicked them from you. But so being new, I always sort of tried to be at the top of the queue or near the top of the queue to get the letters, because the thing was, you just got the letters in a pile, you sifted through them, took a couple and then passed the rest down the line. But in Brighton there was this lovely lady called Betty Porter, and she was widowed, but lovely lady. Her husband had been a lawyer or an attorney or something like that in Brighton, and she had this gorgeous townhouse, and she was offering 2 rooms, and Paul Seeley and I took them, but she didn't want any money for them. Oh. She wouldn't charge us, and she just loved having theatre people. So she would actually, it wasn't just D'Oyly Carte, she would actually have anybody who was at the theatre at the time. So she got a picture gallery of people that
Brighton's
stayed
quite
there.
a theatrical town
Exactly.
for pre-London shows, and also a lot of theatrical residents.
Yeah. And she was an absolutely lovely lady, and I was really surprised the first morning because there was a knock on my door and she brought me breakfast in bed, which was absolutely lovely. And if the weather was fine, I had a little terrace outside my room overlooking Brighton, and I'd have breakfast on the terrace.
Oh, wonderful.
Which was gorgeous. But Paul and I stayed friends with her, and she even came to Paul's wedding when he married Fiona. Which was really nice to see her again. But we kept in touch, and she'd sort of say, I think we'd get Christmas card and she'd give her age. I'm sort of 89 now, and then the next year it'd be 90. It was lovely. And she was absolutely a lovely, lovely lady. And so one that you wanted to go back to time and time again. And then I think we had another instance like that, and I was sharing again with Paul in Norwich. And there was this family who had a lovely kind of Victorian villa type house, and they were just really free and easy. But they got a house at Sheringham on the coast, and would leave us at the weekend and just go off for Friday, Saturday, come back Sunday. And then on our final weekend, she just said, "Oh, we're off to Sheringham." This was Friday night. We're off to Sheringham. She said, "When you go on Sunday, just flip the key back through the letterbox." And that was absolutely amazing.
The level of trust.
The level of trust. It was absolutely great. So I remember that vividly. And then you get some really, weird ones. I remember Bournemouth once, another very big house, and there was a few of us staying there, but the landlady never really engaged with us. She was just renting out the rooms, and I think we did get breakfast. But every night when we came in, this door downstairs would open. I think this must have been her lounge, and she would just, a really thin, small, very, very pale woman, would just peer out of this door and watch you walk up the stairs. Never said anything, and then just closed again. And then I'm sure, checking to see we weren't bringing anyone else in. But it was rather a spooky house. I remember I wasn't feeling very comfortable in the house. It was a bit spooky and eerie. And then Birmingham. I had a place in Birmingham once, and it was so cold. You had hot water bottles and the hot water bottle burst. A wet bed, which was pretty awful. I hated Birmingham. I hated Birmingham with a passion. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Apologies to anyone who comes from Birmingham, and the theatre was awful. It was the Alexandra Theatre, but it was absolutely awful. The wardrobe was under the stage. I mean, it was a great big expanse of space under the stage. You got all the skips down there. And I think there was a couple of dressing rooms down there under the stage as well. But any time you got a dance upstairs, that was quite vigorous, and I'm thinking of, or maybe, the dragoons marching across or something, all this dust would come down, which was pretty awful. But it was quite funny there, because actually you've got quite a nice story. Vera Carnegie, quite a complex woman, because she was set in her ways in many, many ways. She was set in her ways, but in other ways she was quite naive, and had this kind of naive outlook on life. And I remember one of the dressers down under the stage had pink hair, and she had this great big pink sort of feather kind of earring, sort of coming out. And Vera couldn't get over this. She thought it was really strange how somebody should have pink hair. And I think she mentioned it. You've got something in your hair, She's just earring. But the actual dresser was Toya Wilcox.
Oh.
And it was actually before, she got onto the thing, and she was actually a dresser at the theatre.
Oh, wow.
With this pink hair and pink feather earring.
I seem to remember when I first started seeing her on sort of TV as a singer, the pink hair was definitely a thing then. Yes. Oh, wonderful.
So that'd be interesting to see if anyone else remembers Toya Wilcox being a dresser there, because she's very, very quiet.
Yes.
Yeah, very, very quiet.
Yeah, no one's has mentioned her before, so yes. Did you find the company friendly, thinking from the point of view of a number of different disciplines, the wardrobe, the musical staff, the on-stage cast? Was there a sort of camaraderie between you all, or did each discipline tend to stick to itself?
No, there was things right across the board. So at one point I was going out with someone in the orchestra.
Right.
He was the horn player in the orchestra. There was, and I think you shared digs, with people. I remember sharing digs with Kenneth Sanford in Stratford once, which is quite entertaining. Well, there was a few of us. I think there were about 4 of us in this house, and it was a bed and breakfast type thing. I don't know what the woman thought was going to happen, but every morning she'd knock on my door and pretend she wanted to get something out of the wardrobe which belonged to one of her kids, to go to school. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know who else you think is going to be in it.
These theatrical types.
Exactly. But what we used to do in the evening, because we weren't, I don't think she even left us any sandwiches or something, because occasionally, in digs, the landlady would leave you some sandwiches for when you came back at the end of the performance. But I don't think we even got that. So I think Ken was getting a bit fed up, and he sort of said, "Oh, could I have a few drinks?" So I think mine was the biggest room, so we all piled into my room and had a few drinks. I mean, we kept it quite quiet, but just had a few drinks.
A little party.
After the show, but nothing righteous or anything like that. But just to sort of try and unwind, I think it's really difficult if you're going back to digs and then you're on a high because you've done something, and then you just need time to unwind, and we just sort of found that was good. But it was really funny. I'd get a knock on the bedroom door in the morning.
Just a quick head count.
I can't. There were 4 of us, and I can't remember who the other 2 people were. Might have been Paul Seeley, I don't know. Right. I had to ask him.
Well, so what would you say was your happiest memory that you would take away from your years with the cart?
Oh, there's a lot. I mean, there was a great deal of it. It was like a family. It really was like a family.
So many people say that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And people fell out and had disagreements and things, but by and large, I think it was.
That's what families do.
That's what families do, isn't it? Yeah. I think one of the happiest memories I have is actually on my first birthday with the company, and Audra knew about it, John and Vera knew about my birthday, and Heather Perkins knew about it. But every time I went past sort of a certain place in the stage door where, the things are to put letters in and things.
Oh, yeah.
What do I call them?
Oh, the sort of cubbyhole
things. Pigeonholes.
Yes.
Pigeonholes. There was a birthday card, and people were just sort of sending me birthday, and I thought this was absolutely wonderful that everybody practically in the company had sent me a birthday card, which was really nice, and that happened, quite a lot. I seem to remember, it was just a really lovely, friendly company, and people, by and large, were absolutely gorgeous, really, really lovely people. So that was, one of the happiest memories I have is that kind of thing that people did, small things that people did, which I think meant a great deal to people.
And I understand there is still an element of that these days, that there's still little sort of get-togethers of.
They were just very happy days, very, very happy days, touring around and sharing digs and
So, what did you do after you left the company?
Well, it was when they were going on the Australian tour that I decided that, I was finishing, I think, and I wanted to do some stage managing, and there was no way I was ever going to be a stage manager with the D'Oyly Carte. There wasn't vacancies, but Dame Bridget didn't think that women should be stage managers anyway, so there was that kind of thing. So I knew that there was never ever going to be a possibility there. So I went off and I became a deputy stage manager at the Phoenix Theatre in Leicester, and did some theatre and education there. And then when that contract came to an end, I went down to the Torch Theatre in Milford Haven as a stage manager and did a few performances there. And then my contract came to an end and I sort of wended my way back up north. Milford Haven, I wouldn't have stayed anyway because it was too far away from civilization. Down in deep southwest Wales, I really felt cut off from civilization, really. So I came back to Yorkshire, and I was just thinking, okay, I'd applied for a couple more jobs, I think in Crewe and somewhere else up north, I can't remember where. And then I got a phone call out of the blue from Mike Mackenzie saying, would I come back, because Vera Carnegie had become quite ill and was not able to tour, and would I actually sort of come back? So I said, okay. So I joined the company again. Can't remember where, but they were in mid-tour by that time, I think. And Flo Eubank had actually come back to kind of hold the reins, but by that time she was, quite old, and I think was finding it quite strenuous. So I think Flo was quite happy that I'd actually sort of come back and took over the reins as wardrobe mistress, which was nice actually. But the company had changed a lot by that time because John Reed had gone, and so quite a few of the old faces were not around. So it didn't actually feel quite the same. But nonetheless happy, it was good. But at that time, I think also the writing was on the wall in terms of how long everything was going to last anyway, and I just sort of got the feeling that there was only going to be a few more months before everything, would be finished. To be honest, and that was quite sad. So that there was a bit of a different feel about it, really.
Yes. So thank you so much for the hospitality and for agreeing to chat to me today. It's been really wonderful to talk to you. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure, Lawrence.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.